Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had such a great time in Mobile, Alabama at Ross Roberts meetings there. All these ministers gather together, and you never know who's going to speak. And then right before that, we were with Joey Roberts, Ross's son, there in Fort Worth. They had a bunch of ministers together. Those are some of the funnest meetings ever. I got to make sure I point out throughout the year when we're going to be at those, because you need to try to come. They're so cool. If you're anywhere near Canton, Illinois, we'll be at Faith Christian Family Church. It's not too far from Peoria. We'll be there this coming Sunday morning and Sunday night. We'll have a great time getting into the Word. We'll be encouraged. You can't stay the same when you hang out with Jesus. In His presence is fullness of joy. So this weekly update, we come to look at the different things that point to the coming of the Lord, and specifically the gathering of nations for the Ezekiel 38 war, because the rapture is signless, but the second coming has tons of signs. So you got to be real careful. The Gospels are all second coming verses. People try to put rapture verses in the Gospels, and you feel like you don't qualify. It's because you don't qualify. Jesus hadn't been raised from the dead yet. So you got to be careful. All the guys I see on TV putting all these verses from Matthew 24, all about rapture. That's not rapture. When one's taken and one's left, that's the second coming, where the wicked are taken off the earth. It's the opposite of the rapture. So let's look at what's happened this last week. Wow, obviously coronavirus has taken up the news of the whole world. I mean, you have Italy on complete lockdown to where you can't go in or go out. It looks like probably other parts of Europe will be next. It's interesting how quickly it's spread, but you got to realize, not to downplay coronavirus, 20,000 people have already died from the flu this season. So I think the coronavirus is a precursor to what's going to be happening during the tribulation. It's interesting how things always kind of go like that. So you have in Israel where they have a mandatory lockdown for 2 weeks after you come into the country, and visitors are having to leave Israel right now. This is the crazy thing that's going on. Benjamin Netanyahu couldn't form a government. He's trying to form a government again. That he was basically in the lead in the polls that happened a couple of weeks ago. Now it looks like there may have to be a fourth election. So it's just kind of a sign of the times. Along with water filling up in the ritual baths around the Temple Mount, foxes showing up on the Temple Mount, fish showing up in the Dead Sea, the Sanhedrin getting permission to cut down trees to burn the fires for sacrifices. You have all this other stuff going on. You have other stuff going on to the north. This is a pretty crazy deal. You have Iranian diplomats or higher ups in Iran coming down to Lebanon and having going to hospitals that Hezbollah owns to treat the coronavirus. So you have an enormous amount of coronavirus in Iran. So the different thing that keeps happening just below that, though, is Turkey. Remember how we always talk so much about Turkey? Last week, Turkey was doing all that stuff with the Syrian refugees. You had Turkey ripping fences down so refugees could go into Greece again. A horrible situation. They're flying drones all over to try to police Syria. Along with that, remember how Russia and Erdogan from Turkey were kind of at odds with each other over this whole situation there. It's amazing the pull for power over Syria, because remember the Bible says the Antichrist is called the Assyrian. So there's going to be all this fight for power right there above Israel. Along with that, you had Putin even yesterday embarrass Erdogan, made him wait outside his office when they were supposed to have a meeting, made him sit where the butler was sitting. So there's all this weird jockeying for position going on. Along with that, Putin came up with a new law where he can be a president for like the next 40 years of Russia. So that's a big deal, because I believe Putin will be in office when Russia comes down against Israel. So you had earthquakes off the coast of California. You had a secondary earthquake off the coast of California. You have many things happening all over. Along with, in the midst of all of this, you have Gaza still firing rockets into Israel with coronavirus happening all over the place. So it's a completely bizarre time. I was blessed that a friend of mine sent me some info about Wormwood, about the asteroid that's going to hit. It looks like they have a date for the hitting of that is the year 2029. I'd seen it about a year ago, but I kind of discounted it because I wasn't sure about it. But now NASA's saying within 2025 to 26, with a telescope, you'll be able to see that asteroid. And then within the next 2 years after that, the naked eye, you'll be able to see that asteroid. So that could be toward the end of the tribulation. That could be at the beginning of the tribulation. All it tells you is it's bizarre to be living when all these things are coming to pass. I was preaching in the Ukraine, and I said wormwood, and people gasp. And in the Russian Bible, it's the word Chernobyl. So you have all these end-time elements coming together with the people surrounding Israel wanting to annihilate Israel. You had Jordan closing its borders to Egypt and Saudi Arabia and from Iraq. So what an interesting clampdown is happening right now. Really, it tells me how chaotic it's going to be the day after the rapture. It's going to be crazy. So with all this going on, the fun thing is we're about to see Jesus face to face. So let's go to the scriptures and look at all the signs because they're blatant, they're exact, and they're precise. Remember, number one, Israel made a nation. Next, Jerusalem won back. Jesus said the generation that sees those two events will not pass away till all is fulfilled. Then you have the Hebrew language restored. You got the Ethiopian Jews brought back. You've got the fertility of the land of Israel. You have the revival of the Roman Empire. You have the Temple Mount Institute that's ready to have sacrifices. You have 172 different species of predatory birds that started showing up in the land. So you have the cleanup crew in Israel right now. Talking about all the other things of the ritual baths and the foxes that showed up. You've got all these things just preaching to us how close we are to the coming of the Lord. There's many other signs, though. You have men will be lovers themselves. You have selfie sticks. The whole thing about all the signs is Jesus said, lift up your heads, your redemption is drawing nigh. And he really was talking about the second coming there. So the rapture is 7 to 8 years before that. So if you see all these symptoms of the tribulation, all these symptoms of the second coming, man, you literally need to lift your head up. So notice the purpose of that. You could be downtrodden, and Jesus doesn't want you downtrodden. He wants you excited. So you've got tons of signs, and then you got signals. You had blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles. Had 4 in a row. NASA calls it a tetrad. When's the last time you had 4 in a row on Passover and Tabernacles? 1967 when Jerusalem was won back. 1948 when Israel was made a nation. In 1492 at the Edict of Expulsion when the Jews were kicked out of Spain. And then you had the Bethlehem Star last year. That's just crazy. First time in 2,000 years. You had Mercury do a flyby of the sun, went down directly over the Temple Mount at sundown. The planets formed a sickle. The moon formed a sickle. Orion changed his instrument to hammer. So you had hammer and sickle on the same day. See, God's trying to show Israel you're getting ready to go through the threshing floor. So all of these signs are to help us, obviously, see how close we are. But really, as believers, we don't even need a sign. We have a witness in our spirit that Jesus is coming soon. Much less the blatant precision of all the things God said even 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 2,700 years ago. You're living in a time they're all being compressed right before your eyes because the King's about to come back. So what do? Help your local church, help your local pastor, be engaged, be involved in everything you can to get the gospel out. This is it. The most exciting time ever to be on the planet. And remember, this needs to be hammered into us over and over and over again. The whole purpose of this is because He loves you so much. He wants you excited. He wants you expectant. He wants you hopeful. He wants you radically thrusting and accelerating because Jesus is just about to come back. When you see the finish line, you run faster, not slower. So all the purpose of this is not to escape, is to accelerate. So let's do the will of God right here before we see Jesus face to face. Have a blessed, awesome week. We'll come back to you next Wednesday. We'll see you then.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the EDU at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out, or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.